Hello, good morning and welcome, or good afternoon, and welcome to Life at Noon. My name is Rachel Hugenberg. I am one of the librarians out here at Lone Star Sci Fair. And I'm really excited because this morning we're actually going to be talking about one of my new favorite things, which are Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games. So a lot of people are since the pandemic, have started to get into these. And there's actually a really big population of people who are celebrities actually who play Dungeons and Dragons, especially actors, to keep up practice with creativity and with acting. So I brought in another librarian who happens to work at Sci-Fair. This is Brad Dobos. And he actually runs our family-friendly Dungeons and Dragons game, which from what I have heard from people who've attended is a lot of fun. And so I brought him in to talk about Dungeons and Dragons and other role-playing games or RPGs, as you might have heard it, on Life. So Brad, if you would please.
Yes, happy to. Let me see, I'm a little bit, first of all, can you hear me okay? Fantastic. And let me see, I'm a little bit new to Zoom, and I'll see if I can share my little presentation that I've made. Now, what I plan on doing today is I'm going to give you about a 5-minute presentation on what role-playing games are. And then I just want to play a role-playing game with you. That's basically the goal of today's session. That way, once you play the game, you can decide if you like it or not, and develop whatever opinions you have on role-playing from the experience itself. Can you guys see it okay? Okay, sweet. So, role-playing games, a brief introduction. I am Brad Dobos, and let's go ahead and get started. So, first of all, what is a role-playing game? I found it remarkably difficult to actually find a suitable definition. I went to Britannica, I went to Wikipedia. Britannica had nothing, surprisingly. Wikipedia had a very, very broad definition, a game in which players assume the roles of characters in a fictional setting, which could describe a whole lot of different games. So I decided I would come up with my own and try to do it justice. Role-playing games is a game in which players engage in collaborative storytelling using random elements such as dice, rolls, or cards to determine the success or failure of the characters they play. So you are playing a fictional character in a fictional world, and you're telling a story with the other members of your group. And when your character does something in that story, whether they pick a lock, start a fight, have a conversation, to determine the success of that action, you add a random element. And whether you succeed or fail, you keep playing the game. Now, there are different roles in a traditional role-playing game. This is going to describe 95, 99% of role-playing games. There are a few that are very unique, in which some of these roles might not exist, but this is really the basics. So the first is going to be the player characters, and that's going to be most of the people playing the game, and that is just you playing your character in this world. However, because this is not a computer, because this is usually around a tabletop, or in our case, over a Zoom meeting, you need someone to actually play the world and the rest of the people in it. And that person is either called a game master, or in the case of Dungeons and Dragons, a dungeon master. Really, the terms are interchangeable. I tend to use DM because a lot of my role-playing is based upon Dungeons and Dragons, but GM is just as good. So you are playing a character in the world, and the GM or DM is playing the world itself. So the GM determines the difficulty of any of your actions, but the dice roll and your abilities determine the success of those actions. Okay, now one of the big reasons is why play? And I think most people play because it's fun for them. And that's sort of why I play, but not exactly. I got into role-playing because I was building a role-playing game for my daughter. We watched role players online off of YouTube. We were watching Critical Role, which is a role-playing game that's streamed, that is done entirely by professional voice actors. So they're really funny. And my daughter saw this and she got interested. And I thought, wow, that would be great. I view role-playing as an opportunity to develop character. Not everyone views it this way. Sometimes it's just for fun. Sometimes it's just a way of telling a story. But in my opinion, role-playing offers people in general, and children in particular, a chance to live in a world where they are bound only by their imaginations. This is unlike computer games that are bound by whatever the programmer decided to put in the computer game. This is unlike a board game where the board game is set and you follow the rules. You are bound only by the broadest of limitations based on your character and on what you can imagine. I also use the role-playing game with my family as a place to test and develop noble attributes and improving grounds of one character. My daughter gets the chance to play a hero and has to make difficult decisions. And I hope that by doing so, she'll be able to make those difficult decisions in real life as well. So when you're playing a role-playing game, I keep mentioning a character, and your character has certain natural attributes. This can be their natural strength, dexterity, how smart they are. And these are the usual ones used. I've seen role-playing games have as few as 3, mind, body, and spirit, which would be specifically Big Eyes, Small Mouth, which is a role-playing game that came out, I think, in the 90s and was focused heavily on anime. I've seen some that have 20 different attributes. Most of the time, it fits within roughly these 6 of strength, dexterity, endurance, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. And we'll be building your characters today and establishing just what your characters are like and how strong or dexterous or wise they are. Now, you don't just have the baseline attributes. You also have a set of skills that your character knows, because you might be naturally strong, but then if you go lift weights, you're going to get even stronger. You might be naturally intelligent, but you maybe focus on something like astrophysics, as opposed to someone who may be equally intelligent, but they focus on medicine. Well, the astrophysicist is probably shouldn't commit surgery, probably should not engage in surgery, and the doctor probably is not going to be an expert in astrophysics. So you have your baseline attributes and then the skills on top of them, and that determines how much of an advantage you add to the random element in the game, like a dice roll. Now, sadly, I don't have dice to give you. If we were in person, I would have brought some for you to roll. So we're just going to have to roll those dice on the computer here using a random number generator, and I'll let you know what you roll. It's not the best thing, but hey, this is what we got. So before I make your characters, I have only one rule of character creation. You can be anything, but you cannot be everything. That's fine. If you want to be incredibly smart, that's fine. If you want to be smart, strong, tough, fast, good looking, and have absolutely able to shoot lightning out of your eyes, and everyone loves you, and no, you are not allowed to be invincible. You have to have something good, but you also have to be bad at something. And I do this because, first of all, it's more realistic. We're all good at something and bad at something. And second of all, it's incredibly boring to play someone who, no matter what they do, they always win. Part of the challenge of the game is overcoming the problems that you face in the game with your limitations. So, who wants to play?
I would love to. I actually do play D&D as a hobby in my personal life as well. I got into it a couple of years though, because I like story building, and I really like the social elements of it, where it's a bit like a board game, but it's a little less restricted by certain rules. You know, it doesn't have the constraints that Monopoly does. You can make up your own story. So you guys can respond in the chat as well. And you are, of course, free to unmute yourselves if you want to.
I can do it with one volunteer, but it's a lot better if I have two.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to have to be the DM. I'm going to be the world that you play in. So can I have one more volunteer?
Okay, and you can also participate through the chat if you want to.
All right.
Okay.
Rachel, let's go ahead and get started, and maybe somebody will want to join in.
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. So there's plenty of different ways to make characters. The way I like to make characters is I just want to learn about the character that you want to play. And remember, you can be anything. The rough setting is going to be the stereotypical setting for role-playing games. Most people start out, which is something roughly equivalent to Lord of the Rings, Narnia, sort of a feudalistic Western European society that is, has access to magic. Magic is fantastic, but it is also something that most people have seen at least once in their lives, sort of like how technology is for us. Now, very first thing, what's your character's name?
I think I'm just going to go by Blue.
What?
I think I'm just going to go by Blue.
Blue. Okay.
Yes.
Now, I want you to tell me a little about Blue. How tall is Blue? Is Blue a man, a woman, a child, an adult?
Blue is a dragon, and Blue is like a Mushu-sized dragon.
So dragon about yay big?
Yep.
Okay.
Breeze fire, sort of flies, terrible puns.
So when Moo shows up to a party, is Moo, I'm sorry, not Moo, Blue.
Okay.
When Blue shows up to the party, is Blue the life of the party? Is Blue the guy who burns down the house? Is Blue the guy that everyone goes, oh God, Blue's here. Okay, I think I have a dentist appointment tomorrow morning.
Just good at snazzy comebacks, I think. You know, very chill, but good at a snazzy comeback.
All right. If so, is Blue scary? Like if you get Blue angry, are you gonna? No, not so much.
No, not really. This is a small dragon. So.
And if Blue wants something, like really wants something, how does is Blue a boy or a girl?
I guess Blue is female in this case, though we have a comment from Sarah, which is everyone would laugh at Blue being angry, which certainly would suit the characteristics of a small cat-sized dragon getting mad.
Hey, if I had a small cat-sized dragon right here, I mean, I might be intimidated. All right, so
you totally should be.
I just angry mixture of blue and red. I like it. Yeah. Well, maybe I'll use that.
So right, now I'm a chameleon dragon. Okay.
So let's say Blue goes to the market. Does Blue end up getting everything that she wants and comes back with more money in her pocket, or is she one of these people who shows up, just gets what she needs, or is she somebody where she shows up, doesn't buy anything, and comes back, and she doesn't have any money left?
I'd say she likes to trade for things.
Likes to trade? Is she good at it though?
Yes. She's
All right.
good at, say, trading scales or, dragon eyelash that she's lost or whatever as ingredients for spells. So
Very entrepreneurial.
made friends. She gets her supplies. Occasionally she gets distracted by some very sparkly loot that shows up and decides that she must have it. But other than that, she's usually pretty good.
All right. What does she love more than anything?
Chocolate.
Okay.
See, the nice thing, guys, about character creation is you can literally be anything. And Mystic Scrolls, yes.
And Mystic Scrolls. Okay.
Chocolate and mystical scrolls, though not at the same time.
What is she most afraid of?
Spiders.
Now, does Blue use magic at all?
She's magic in nature, so she can if she wants to, but mostly small things. Like breathing fire, flying, occasionally being invisible, changing colors.
Is she able to dodge it? Is it almost certainly going to hit her? Or is she going to not only catch it in midair, but also throw it back and hit the person between the eyes?
She'll try to dodge. She can sometimes be clumsy, but she'll try.
Okay. Okay, so is Blue the sort of dragon that everyone goes to get their questions answered?
Yeah. That's why her cave is in the country and not in the city.
And
she just wants to do her research and eat her chocolate and hang out.
Okay. Now, so somebody walks into, Blue's having a conversation with someone in a bar, and they talk for about an hour, and the person that Blue is talking to says, "So, do you know who else has been in this bar? Would Blue be able to name every single person, or would Blue be more like, there's other people in this bar?" The second? Okay.
Yeah.
How mentally tough is Blue?
Blue's pretty strong.
Okay. And lastly, does Blue have any items or anything that she wears on herself?
No.
If anybody else wants to join in, let me know. We can very quickly make your character on the fly. Okay. So Blue is an adventurer, and do a little bit of railroading here. There's two ways to play a role-playing game. One is to railroad, which is you have a preset adventure and you more or less have to stay on the tracks for. The other is to sandbox, which is to say there's an open world, and whatever the players do, the GM has to adapt to it. Now, for the purposes of this, I thought it would be better to railroad a little bit, because that way I can direct the adventure and we can adapt to it. And you'll sort of see, hopefully, a spectrum of role playing from interpersonal relations to combat to whatever else. So Blue has been hired, along with a few other adventurers, to help protect a small village, the village of Freehold, which is along a river on the outskirts of the kingdom of Lystra. Lystra is a relatively smallish kingdom. Think of it about the size of, say, Lithuania and Estonia. Its king is not great and not bad either. The people are relatively happy, but it does have the problem that many other kingdoms have, that there are creatures that do not take kindly to having humans infringe upon their territory, and also don't take kindly when the humans are unhappy when they infringe upon the humans' territory. So there's a sort of low-level conflict between humanity and their allies, the dwarves, the elves, as well as the other, who are generally referred to as the monstrous species of this world. Freehold is a relatively new town. It has a moot, and as they're working on a bailey, that means there's a large hill on which there is a small wooden keep. And below that, there's a small town that has a tavern. It's also an inn, has a couple of houses, and the houses also serve as shops. You have someone who spins yarn, you have another person who is a blacksmith, and there's a cluster of houses here. The adventurers were hired because a wall was being built up around the lower town, and basically they needed some extra muscle to make sure that if something came by, that they'd be able to deal with the monsters that came in. The wall is almost done. Blue and the other adventurers that were hired through the Adventurers Guild, which provides them with their contracts. An adventurer is a general term for a person who does this sort of work for hire, part mercenary, part bodyguard, part soldier, and part private detective. So Blue is making her way. She plans on having dinner at the local tavern and walking across the mud streets of Freehold. See, there within the town, there's the smell of bread in the air. The small houses are neat, well kept, but a little bit small. Kids are on the street, which is more of a glorified path, playing. Out in the distance, you hear the bleating of goats or sheep, the mooing of cows, which are now grazing out away from the farmland that hugs the outer wall. You hear the shouts of guardsmen as different caravans begin to try and come in different wagons. They have to be examined before they come into the town. And you see the occasional watchman. There's maybe 6 of them in the town, and you smell the cooked meat and roasting of stew. Your stomach growls a little bit. You've just managed to sell some of your scales that fell off at the local market, and you have a couple of silver pieces. But you've never been much for keeping the silver pieces on you, having not a pouch or anything. I figure once you have it, it's best to spend it. Something very undragon-like, which is one of the reasons why you don't necessarily like to hang out with other dragons. They just don't understand how much more fun lore is to learn than to just sit on a large pile of cold, kind of rough, pointy pieces of gold. As you make your way through the town, you see a little girl that you know. Her name is Ashley. And Ashley comes up to you as you're making your way to the tavern. Blue, look at my puppy. And she holds up a little dog that appears to be 90% fluff, and is obviously just been taken out of a gutter someplace. The dog is kind of confused and doesn't know whether it's being rescued or it should be afraid. But regardless, looks up with you with big brown puppy dog eyes. And let's begin.
Ashley, your puppy is awesome. Where did you find it?
I found it right over there. And she points to a puddle that is right outside the tavern, right below where the trough would be.
Have you considered giving it a bath?
Do you think they'd let me use the trough?
I think you should ask.
You're so smart, Blue. Thank you. And she trots off and heads off to the back of the tavern. As she does this, the mayor of the town, there's a mayor and there's a local lord who both work in conjunction with each other. The mayor of the town sees you as he's sort of opening the door to the tavern, goes, Blue, come on in, have lunch with me.
Sure. You buying?
Don't we pay you enough? Oh, certainly. Come on in.
Okay, I'm coming. And I sort of gently waddle float in because I am ready to eat. And I sit and I order my stew and I ask the mayor, so what's going on?
Well, with the wall nearly done and your contract nearly over, we'll be sorry to see you go, but your time here, it's almost up. I figure, why not treat you to a decent meal? You know the old saying, there's nothing that the commoners love more than to see an adventurer arrive, than to see the adventurer leave. You are people who come, you are people of need, and we are grateful to have had you here, but with the wall almost done.
That's fair. I need to get back to my cave anyway to catalog my scrolls.
As you're having the conversation with the mayor, a woman, middle-aged, a little heavy-set, very jolly, hair tied back in the bun, comes up. Oh, Blue, I see you finished your stew. Would you like some more? Oh, you got to put some meat on your bones. Look at you, look at you. It's such a tiny little dragon. Not that I have a problem with tiny dragons. I love you, dearie. I love you, but come on. Have another scoopful of stew. Would you like some ale? Would you like some ale? Yeah, it'll put meat on your bones too.
I think I'm good, Maggie. If I have too much meat on my bones, I won't be able to fly.
Ah, flying's overrated. Never flew in my life, except that one time, and that was not fun. That was not fun at all. Don't mind flying, mind the falling, and the briefs, and the sharp stop at the end. Ah, right. Well, I'll never convince you. The other adventurers, they come in, they eat themselves full, but you, my lovely, lovely Blue. Ah, do you have any scales for me, dearie? You know my daughter loves them.
I just sold the last of my scales. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're breaking my heart. You're breaking my heart.
But you want to talk to Wendy if you're wanting to buy them from her. I gotta make a living.
Ah, all right, dearie.
I'll save some for her the next time I shed, and I will stop by.
I appreciate it. You know she loves you. Have you seen her new pet?
Yes.
Aye, a dog. She wanted to rinse it in the trough.
Oh,
I love her, but she's got to learn. She's got to learn. That's the water for horse drinking. Oh, well, we could use a dog. Yeah. Why not?
Guard the inn, keep her company. There's a lot of good things about having a dog, just so long as she doesn't try to take any dragons for pets. We've had some conversations about that.
You'd be a lovely pet, Blue.
I'm not a pet, though.
I know.
I'm an adventurer. Okay, well, unless you and the mayor have something else to discuss with me, I guess I'm going to go back to my cave.
Well, you have a lovely day, Lassie. We're going to miss you when you leave.
Thanks. I'll stop by sometime when I'm flying over.
With that, the mayor holds out his finger for you to do a little handshake.
Thank you.
Heads over to a table where there's a couple of older gentlemen with a bottle of whiskey playing cards and start laughing and telling jokes. And you make your way out of the tavern / inn and are about to. Now I want you to. We'll do what's called an awareness check. So now you said that he wasn't, or I'm sorry, she was not very aware, and so
she's a little oblivious. She flies into stuff sometimes.
That means I gave you a modifier on this check of a -3, which is to say that she's really not aware. Good, and +3 is one of the best, naturally speaking.
Yeah.
-1 is a little bit worse than average. -2 is pretty awful. And -3 is, oh my God, how have you not tripped? Like if you're talking about your dexterity, how have you not tripped over and fallen and killed yourself yet? So Blue is pretty oblivious and manages to roll a natural 20. Wow. The way it works in Dungeons and Dragons and a lot of other D20 role-playing games, D means dice, 20 is the number of sides, is that if you roll a natural 1, in other words, it shows up at just 1, then you end up getting an automatic failure, no matter how good you are at something. If you roll a natural 20, it's an automatic success no matter how bad you are. And the modifiers are for everything in between. Now, in this particular case, Blue would have had to have rolled at least a 15 in order to see what is going on. As it is, because she gets a natural 20, she automatically succeeds and notices the necrotic arm of what appears to be a dead body underneath, hanging out ever so slight underneath the wheel well of one of the wagons that is just trying to enter the town.
What?
Looks like the body may have been hidden because the top of the wagon is covered with hay. Also, the guards seem to be fairly oblivious to this, as they're arguing with the guy who is not arguing, but they're talking to the guy who happens to be driving the cart, and the guy is holding out some a little bit of cash, a little bit too obviously that he's trying to bribe the guards.
Look out! There's something shady about this wagon. Check the back.
And with that, the guards look over at Blue, look back, drawing their swords, she having earned their trust over the past few months. The creature, who looked a little bit short to be a human, pulls back its cowl to reveal greenish skin, little beady eyes, long ears, and fangs in its mouth. A head that's too big for its body, and a body that's too big for its arms and legs, which you obviously recognize as a goblin. With that, the goblin begins to choke out goblinoid language, gobbledygook, and proceeds to say, now, does Blue speak Goblin?
I think that might be an intelligence check, Brad. We might have to see.
Okay, let's roll another d20 and let's see. But in this case, Blue has an advantage because she's done so much research. She actually gets a +3 to this roll. So not very aware, but once she's aware, pretty bright. And she gets a 9. Sadly, the goblin is speaking so quickly she can't quite make it out, but appears to say one of the words rise and attack.
Oh.
At which point you begin to see the arms and legs inside this wagon move out, reaching out through the hay as a series of humanoid bodies crawl out of the wagon, reaching over and begin to start clawing and grabbing at the guards at the gate. You are now being attacked by a group of zombies. At the same time, you hear howling and shouting and screaming that are the obvious sounds of people being attacked and a goblin war cry from outside the gates as the guards draw swords, hold up spears, and begin to try and push back, heavily outnumbered with the attack coming in. And with this, we're going to roll for initiative.
Okay.
Now, rolling for initiative means that that's how fast your character is on their feet to make a decision. Now, in this case, you said that Blue was not bad, so I put her at above average. I gave her a +1. If you want to change any of these, by the way, and it doesn't fit your character, let me know. I'm perfectly happy to modify them.
Nah, we're good.
The goblins won the initiative. And next comes you, and next comes the zombies. So you can't see the goblins yet, but as you're trying to decide what to do, you do see several tiny green creatures begin to move in, moving in packs. They come underneath the wheel wells. They come up and prepare to try and leap onto and jump on the guardsmen. The guardsmen are caught somewhat by surprise as they're trying to deal with the zombies, and I will now do the rolls for the attacks for those goblins. So let's see. The opening, the gates of the town. excuse me, they rolled terribly. We had a 10, a 6, a 1, and a 20. I don't usually get that many natural 20s, but the 10, the 6, and the 1, the goblins are viciously trying to attack, but the guards, thanks to their armor and thanks to their training, has really paid off, and the goblins are simply not scoring a lot of hits. However, one of the goblins leaps up on top of one of the guards, grabs him, and bites into his throat. You see the guard stumble back, trying to fight the goblin as blood starts to run down. He's been hit in the one place that his armor can't survive. The goblin's trying to get up on top, sort of cackling in glee as he begins taking this guy down. And the guy drops his spear, goes for his knife, and begins to try and fight off the goblin on top of him. With that, that is the goblin's turn. And it is now your turn. What do you wish to do?
I wish to roll for fire so I can see if I can torch the goblins.
Okay.
Are goblins fire resistant in this? Am I allowed to ask?
Okay. No, I mean, they're creatures. They burn like everybody else. All right. You watch as friends who you've, been hanging out with for the past couple of months are now being attacked by these creatures. You start to go purple with rage. You launch yourself up in the air, sinuously moving up forward, and you end up blowing fire over the zombies and as many of the goblins without actually targeting the two guardsmen that are on either side of the gate. So let's go ahead and roll a d20. This is way more fun when you get to do your own rolls, by the way. So the way I'm going to treat this fire breathing the same way that I would treat it if you were a dragonborn, which is to say it's an innate ability, and but you only get to use it once, and then you have to rest for a period of time, a couple hours before you get to do it again. Is that fair?
Sounds good.
Okay, so up in the air, you breathe down fire on the goblins and on the zombies. They have to roll checks to their constitution to see how tough they are, and they take some damage. So they're going to take, say it's about 1d8, the standard damage, I believe. They each take 5 damage. What you notice is that the goblins are not dead, but they are now running around trying to put the fire off in their clothes. They're badly scorched. The goblin that's on top of the guard is still just on top of him because you couldn't get rid of him. And the zombies that have now started to climb out and over the edge of the cart have now burst into flame. Their clothes have caught fire, the hay has caught fire, the cart has caught fire, and they start crawling out, zombies on fire. They're still moving, but they're badly hurt. With that, I am now going to play the guards. So the guard that is now being attacked by the goblin is going to try and disengage the goblin and stab him with his dagger. The black hooded figure that has leapt on top of the guard does end up managing to pull it back and bring his dagger down, but this guy is really slippery. So this goblin is really slippery and just slips out of the hold and drops onto the ground, taking only a minor strike. The other guard check the stats here. Okay, the other guard, focusing on one of the zombies, takes up his spear, slams it into the zombie, end up putting a strike right through the head and disabling the zombie completely. He then pulls it back again, makes another strike, and again hits the next zombie. So he's gotten 2 of them out, and the zombies on his side of the cart are now both dead. One taken right through the head, the other one taken right through the throat, and the two burning zombies collapse into the burning cart. But the guard has to fall back as the two goblins, still on fire, are trying to approach him, and the smoke and the noxious fumes from the burning cart are getting to be a little bit too much for him. With that, we will now do the zombies' turn. The two zombies, and I do die rolls for all of this, so I don't know what's going to happen until I roll the die. Two zombies eventually crawl out of the cart, and they go after the guard that have been attacked by the goblin that jumped on top of him. But the two zombies miss, clawing at him, trying to hit something, and instead just generally being too slow to be effective at all. Right. With that, we're back on the goblins. Now, as this is happening, Blue, you have sinuously brought yourself up into the air. You've gotten higher and higher. You're looking down, and you now see 4 or 5, now 6 enormous wolf-like creatures. And they are, each one is being followed by a small crowd of little green people who don't appear to be armed at this point. The wolves come rushing in. They slam into the sides of the burning cart, pushing it aside. These things are easily the size of the largest dogs you've ever seen, and you immediately recognize them as wargs. They go ahead and successfully charge into and knock down the two guardsmen, incidentally also scattering their goblin allies in the process, and are now in the town, behind which a bunch of goblins, which appear to be somewhat smaller, begin rushing all over the town, grabbing anything they can get their hands on: knives, axes, shiny objects, food, and several of them carrying little, what appear to be jars and containers that have a fuse or some other piece of cloth lit to them, begin trying to light them. But it's an apparent effort to burn down the town.
Great.
It is now your turn.
This is a tough place to be because I'm thinking about Blue's abilities, and maybe the spellcast ability that she might have might come in handy here. Does she have any spellcast ability for projectiles?
Yeah, she can.
Okay. We're going to try that, and we're going to start with trying to take out the goblins using projectiles.
Okay, so tell me about the projectile that she shoots. Is it fire? Is it ice? Is it acid?
Let's go with ice.
Okay. So, which goblin is she going to strike? Is she going to try to strike the one that's trying to apparently light this thing and burn down one of the buildings? Is she going to strike the goblin that just jumped onto the guard and now has jumped off?
Let's take out the one who is trying to torch the village.
Okay. So Blue ends up summoning within her innate magical ability. She feels the cold chill of ice welling up. She breathes in, blows out, and as her breath touches her fingers, it changes, morphs, and becomes a spike of ice that goes driving forward toward this creature trying to burn down the village. In a row. Got a 15, which just hits the goblin's AC. So you end up successfully striking, and give me a second because I can't remember what. Okay, so you managed to hit the goblin. The goblin that was previously trying to use its flint and steel to light this thing goes and begins sort of running around. You have one more action that you want to take. What do you want to do?
Is there a mystic spell that will freeze non-human creatures in this play?
Not that I think Blue would have access to.
Okay.
because blue is supposed to be, in my mind, a low level, 1 to 3rd level D&D character. So probably would not have that level of power yet.
Can I strike them with lightning?
Sure, we can say you have that.
Okay, let's roll for that.
Okay.
Lots of weather-related power here.
Natural 20.
Okay.
Awesome. So you end up taking a lightning strike. Again, same thing, breathing in, but this time changing the weave of magic so that when you blow out, it doesn't produce ice, but instead crackles and generates a bolt of lightning that strikes outward, striking not the goblin, but the container that it's holding. The container explodes, lighting the goblin on fire, killing it apparently on impact, but far enough away from the houses that it doesn't cause any damage. The 2 other goblins around it also catch fire and proceed to drop everything that they had looted and begin running out. One of them jumping into one of the troughs to get himself to get the fire off of itself. As the rest of this is happening, I'm going to close up the story because we only have a few minutes. As this is happening, you see 2 things. First of all, one of the goblins on top of the great, massive wolf-like beasts proceeds to reach down and grab who you recognize as Ashley and throw Ashley over his saddle. You notice that some of the other goblins on their wolf rider, on their wargs, are doing the same thing, grabbing what appear to be young kids, as well as anything that might be large enough for them to steal. With that, the one that was wearing the black hood and that started the attack proceeds to take out, let's say, a little horn, blows it, and then proceeds to scream in gobbledygook. With this, all the goblins that were running around and grabbing things proceed to turn and try and run. And as they're doing this, the villagers, having become aware of what's going on, begin coming out of their houses. They're carrying swords, they're carrying knives, they're carrying spears, they're carrying shields. These are hard people that live on the frontier, and this attack was very, very fast, but they're responding to it as quickly as they can. From up above you in the moot, you hear guards yelling, and you hear the creaking of doors open up as 2 men who seem to have barely donned armor come rushing out on horses to try and start running down the goblins. The goblins obviously know that they were not going to be able to take this town, and it's been a very fast smash and grab raid. You hear Ashley screaming at the top of her lungs, "Blue! Blue!" as she is raced out past the gate and past the burning wagon. You see the mayor, you see the old men, both of them, the entire group coming out of the tavern ready to fight. And you see as they very quickly don't engage the goblins right away, but form a shield wall and start moving systematically down the road to push anything else that's left. Of the 2 zombies that are standing there, the men make quick work of them, jabbing spears into one as the barmaid who helped you before comes out with a cleaver and manages to chop the head off the other from behind. And with that, the goblins are gone, but so are several of the village's children. The mayor looks up at you as you flutter down, says, "I think I have a job for you." And that is where I will end the session.
Okay, so what you guys have just done is basically play a round of D&D with us. Brad was acting as our DM. Thank you so much, Brad, for that wonderful creative story. It was a really fun adventure. I have not played as a dragon before, so first time for everything. And basically, this is a little bit of a taste of what Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games are. You get a chance to do some building, which is really neat.
Now, a couple of things to keep in mind is that I tried to make this session as entry level as possible. And so there's a whole bunch of different ways to make characters. And there's a whole bunch of different ways to play role-playing games. And I tried to take as much of the number crunching and as much of the analysis as I could so that people could just be wrapped up in the story. And there's other times when people play and they really like the number crunching. They really like building their character. They really like optimizing. There's no wrong way to play a role-playing game. is really bounded only by your imagination. And well, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope we've given you at least a little taste of the role-playing games. If you're interested in learning more, please contact either myself or Rachel. It's been a pleasure and an honor to be here today.
Yep. And if you want to play more D&D, we do have a family-friendly game of D&D that Brad runs on Saturdays that you're more than welcome to join us for. And he's got some really fun stories in store for that I've been lucky enough to hear about. So do keep that in mind because it's always a fun play. I've actually come a couple of times myself and had a really good time. And with that, thank you so much for this slice of escaping from life into a whole nother reality. And next week, we are going to have Miss Ashley Orlando, who is a fantastic musician. 3 Secrets to Unleashing Your Inner Musician, which is a brief crash course for music appreciation and understanding the musical world and how people interact with it. So do join us for that next week. And we will see you next week at noon. Thank you so much. Bye.